Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin Malone. Today's case is on a very recent one that the public has been very involved in, and this is one that I have actually been following very closely as well. And that is the very recent disappearance of 4-year-old Orrin and 3-year-old Orson West from their adoptive parents' home. Don't forget, if you're new here, to hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell down below so that you can be notified when I post a new video. And as always, if there's anywhere you could share this video, it would help out a lot to spread the word on this case. So now let's get into the details. Orrin and Orson were born to a woman named Ryan Dean, who was their birth mother, and they were taken away from her very soon after they were born. According to an interview, while she was pregnant with Orson, she took Orrin to the hospital because he was fussing and experiencing some sort of discomfort, and they ended up discovering that he had a broken leg. And so CPS obviously got involved and they ended up taking him away from her. Allegedly, she said that the stress from all of that put her into preterm labor, and then she ended up giving birth to Orson prematurely, and then he was also later taken by CPS. It seems that shortly after they were taken away from Ryan, the Wests got involved and they ended up fostering both of the little boys. It seems that she still had communication with the boys somewhat, and that she was working on herself, and her ultimate goal and plan was to get her boys back. She had a court hearing and she ended up going to it, and the judge did not accept her medical marijuana card. He wanted her to go to like a drug rehabilitation kind of thing, or whatever she ended up having to do. Either way, she ended up going back to the judge. Again, the judge did not accept her medical marijuana card. So from there, basically the social workers felt that the Wests would be the best option for little Orrin and Orson, and they thought it would be best for the boys if the Wests adopted them. So some way, somehow, Ryan ended up having to give up her parental rights to the Wests, and they ended up adopting the boys. So in 2020, it seems that the Wests were living in Bakersfield or somewhere near Bakersfield, California. But in September 2020, they ended up moving to a smaller town about an hour outside of Bakersfield called California City, California. And the alleged reason for this move was for them to get off the grid and kind of grow their own food on the property. Just right off the bat, that's a little strange because California City is in the Mojave Desert. It's pretty hard to grow food in a desert setting unless they set up kind of like planter boxes and stuff. Keep that in mind. We'll get to all of the very weird statements later. So the two adoptive parents in question in this case are Trezell and Jaclyn West. Not 100% sure how old Jaclyn is, but I thought I read somewhere that Trezell is around 34 years old. So Jaclyn, I'm assuming, is somewhere around that age as well. So what we know, they have 2 biological children that are unnamed, as well as 2 other adoptive children that are also unnamed, and then they have Orrin and Orson, which they also ended up adopting. So altogether, they had 6 children, and Orrin and Orson were the youngest of these 6 children. It's reported that Jaclyn didn't have a job. She basically said that she stayed at home and took care of the children, and from what I've seen, that they were doing homeschooling. I assume then that she was also kind of homeschooling all 6 children. On the other hand, it seems that Trezell didn't have a solid job either. He was kind of like an entrepreneur, it seemed like, and he said that he was selling beets online, which can be a profitable business for some. It seems that it's reported he was selling these beets for around $200 to $300 per beet. Somewhere it's claimed that he said he only claims $10,000 a year from this business. So if you just logically think about that, they have 6 children plus them. They're supporting 8 people off $10,000 a year. Doesn't really make sense. And so it is pretty much known that the majority of their money was coming from fostering these 4 children. The big question that arises from that right off the bat is, how can these 2 people that already have 2 children legally adopt 4 more children while only claiming $10,000 a year? Doesn't really make too much sense to me. I honestly don't know much about the fostering and adoption system, but I feel like they should probably not allow people that are only making $10,000 a year to adopt. And you have to be making like a certain amount of money so you can support yourself and support the children that you're adopting and the children that you already have. And $10,000 a year just doesn't cut it. So unless they were making money some other way somehow and just weren't talking about it, but from far as I could gather, they were living off the money from fostering children. So I don't know, very strange that the California foster system would allow this couple to foster 4 children. Just me? I don't know. The Wests had first fostered the children in 2018, and then they finally adopted them in 2019. That is kind of some backstory so you can kind of understand the dynamic of what's going on. Let's get into the disappearance. Orrin and Orson West were first reported missing by their adoptive parents, Trezell West and Jaclyn West, on Monday, December 21st, 2020. On this day, the 4 other children were quote-unquote on vacation at their grandmother's house, leaving the other 2 boys as the only children in the home. According to Trezell and Jaclyn, Orrin and Orson were out in the backyard on the concrete playing with chalk while Jaclyn wrapped presents and Trezell collected firewood to put in the fireplace because it was chilly that day. A few minutes passed before Trezell realized that he had left the side gate open in the backyard and the boys were no longer there. So according to Trezell and Jaclyn, this is how the timeline goes. Trezell then says that he immediately runs inside, asks Jaclyn if the boys are in there with her, where she says no, so he runs back outside and jumps in his van to go look around the neighborhood for them. He says that he checked every corner and nearby street as well as yelled out for them, and then eventually went and asked the neighbor if they had seen the boys, where they also declined that. With it getting darker outside and the boys still not found, Trezell decided that they needed to call the police, and the police were then called at 5:45 p.m. that day. This is when the police arrived. They brought canines with them and they began to search. The police began directing the dogs through the home and in the backyard and the surrounding kind of area to try to get a scent on the boys. And the strange thing is that the dogs only alerted for the scent of the boys in the home, not in the backyard of the home, which is just very odd to me, considering later on in an interview that Trezell describes the boys as rambunctious, and a 3- and 4-year-old are normally pretty rambunctious. You think that they'd be running all over the backyard. It's also said that the boys disappeared from the backyard where they were playing with chalk. So why did the dogs not detect any scent of the boys in the backyard? So the police bring the parents in for questioning and obtain a search warrant for the home. Their van was seized along with all of their electronic devices. Even though all of that happened, nothing has been announced in what was found in the search of the home, but there are photos of the police leaving the home carrying evidence bags. Like I mentioned, this case is really blown up in the public and the media because of how sketchy it is. The public also jumped in and tried to help with the search efforts, but while all of that was happening, the Wests stayed home and did not help in the search whatsoever. Everyone else was looking for their boys, but they weren't, which was a huge red flag for everyone. On live television, Jaclyn and Trezell said the reason that they did not aid in the search was because the police told them not to and for them to stay home. And now that exact interview is something really big that I need to talk about. 2 days after, on December 23rd, the Wests go on live television on an interview with KGET News. This interview has been dissected by so many people, and it's even been compared to the Chris Watts interview. And normally I would play devil's advocate in things like these. Everyone reacts differently to different situations. There's also a large crowd standing around, as well as Orrin and Orson's birth mother and birth family standing there.
And leaving 2 little kids out here by themselves for 10 minutes.
No, they were in the backyard. And the back gate was
out the backyard?
And the back gate was open, and I was getting wood from this lot here. So
you guys been unresponsible and left the gate open, left some little kids outside with the gate open.
So they could have been nervous, but I honestly would not chalk this up to nerves. I think that it is also extremely sketchy, and ever since Chris Watts, every time there's an interview, everyone tries to compare the interview to Chris Watts. They always try to nitpick every little thing everyone does and says in interviews now. I would normally play devil's advocate, but honestly I'm on the bandwagon for this one. So I'm just gonna break down this interview very briefly. I'll have it linked down below if you want to watch the full thing yourself. Okay, I'm just gonna play part of the interview now so you can understand what I'm talking about, and then we're gonna talk about some key points in a moment.
So tell us what happened the night the kids went missing.
Okay.
From our yard.
Okay. It was cold. I was gonna make a fire. There's a lot of wood in this area right here next to our house. I opened up the back gate. I'm throwing wood, bringing it inside the house. My wife's inside. She was actually wrapping gifts, so we thought it was a good idea that our youngest 2 would go outside and play with chalk on the back patio. Do not let them go on the dirt in the backyard. We keep them close. So I was playing with chalk, and I came in the house. I saw them there. I went in the house. I came back out. I didn't see them now. I immediately went back in, asked my wife, did you see the boys? She said, no, they should be outside playing with chalk. I said, well, I didn't see them, so I came back outside and I started searching my backyard. I searched the whole thing. I realized that I left the gate open and I panicked.
So the key things that people are questioning and kind of comparing to the Chris Watts interviews is the fact that Trezell and Jaclyn are swaying side to side in this interview. They're avoiding eye contact. Trezell takes this huge breath before jumping into this storyline that kind of sounds like he rehearsed it. It's not kind of natural. It's like this very elaborate story instead of just saying like, I left the gate open and the boys are missing. And you know, they were wearing X, Y, and Z, which again, they never mentioned the boys' names. They never mentioned what the boys are wearing, which you think would be very key things to be like, my boys Orrin and Orson are missing. They were wearing, you know, like a red t-shirt and blue jeans, or, you know, sweatpants and a t-shirt, telling the public what they're wearing so that they can look out for them. But they don't mention that at all. I just tell this elaborate story of an excuse why they were not watching them. They also never cry in the interview, which is a key one that people always like to point out. Like, if their child was missing, they would be frantic, bawling their eyes out. You know, the arm crossing is a very big one as well. It's a hostile move when someone's uncomfortable. Another really big one that people question, I also thought was very weird when I watched the interview, is Trezell describes the boys very strangely.
Our boys, they are going to be rambunctious, okay? They are going to be here in this area.
He says they're going to be rambunctious, okay? Which I don't understand why you'd say that about two little missing boys. Like, okay, of course a 3 and 4 year old are going to be hyper rambunctious in his words, but why would they be rambunctious if they're missing? You think they'd be scared and crying and not knowing where they are, or lost, and they wouldn't be rambunctious if they were missing. But he also then clears his throat and says that they're going to be in the area. You know, in my opinion, I feel like he was trying to keep people not looking elsewhere, and he was trying to keep people's attention in the immediate area, possibly because the boys weren't in the immediate area and they were elsewhere. So I'm pretty sure you're getting by now that the adoptive parents are very suspicious in this case, and that most people are pretty sure that they're involved. So it kind of begs the question then, if the bio mom was somehow trying to get the boys back, could they have possibly done something to the boys so that the mom couldn't get them back? Happens so often in custody cases between husband and wives when they're fighting and getting divorced, that one will sometimes hurt themselves and the child in spite so that the other parents can never have them, in like a if I can't have them no one can kind of situation. A little bit far-fetched maybe, but a thought to have. A statement analyst by the name of Peter Hyatt actually did an analysis on the West interview. He's actually worked on a couple other high-profile cases, such as the John Benet Ramsey case, as well as the Letitia Stout interviews. The Letitia Stout one was also very reminiscent to the Chris Watts interviews. So he went through and analyzed their interview, and it seems that he detected overall this sense of neglect. If you want to see his analysis in a lot more detail, I definitely recommend checking out the YouTube channel It's a Crime. I'll have the video linked down below. Okay, so that was the interview and the timeline that Trezell and Jaclyn gave, but just because this case just is so strange. So they claimed all this stuff happened, yet a neighbor released footage from a camera on their property that contradicts what the Wests say happened. Hello, this is Editing Caitlin. I just needed to jump in and clarify, because I forgot to mention it while I was filming, that the times I'm about to tell you on the video footage from the neighbor's house are actually an hour behind. So all the times I'm going to be telling you are the times that it shows on the video footage. For whatever reason, the neighbor that owns this camera said that the times were an hour behind. So when I say, for example, like 4:42 or whatever, it's actually 5:42. Just disregard the times and add an hour on. So according to this footage, between 4:12 and 4:21, Trezell is in the backyard by the gate, and he's going back and forth by the gate, possibly getting the wood that he mentioned. There's no way that the children could have gotten out of this gate at that point in time, because Trezell was there. He would have seen them run by him. He would have known, because he was in the way of the gate. From what you can see on the cameras, there's no one else there but him at the gate. So then around 4:21, he goes back into the house. The lights go on and off. Possibly they're looking for the boys. And then at 4:32 p.m., Trezell comes out of the house, jumps in his van through the passenger side, and drives off, possibly to search for the boys. It's just strange that he didn't check the front yard when he ran out of the house. You think if you're looking for children that are missing, you like kind of look everywhere. You look all around your front yard, like side yards, maybe look in the neighbors' yards, because if it just happened like very quickly, within a few minutes they disappeared, they would be pretty close. They were young children. They're not gonna, you know, run a couple blocks down in a minute. Either way, 6 minutes later he returns. So that means he only searched for the boys for 6 minutes. That doesn't sound very thorough to me. Either way, at 4:40 he gets out of his van and then stands by the tree in his front yard waiting for the police to come. This is also really strange, because in his interview he said he ran into the house and told his wife to call the police. but he doesn't even go back into the house to even ask her if she had found the kids. You think if your children were missing, you would have gone out to look for them, come back, ran back into the house and been like, have you found them? Like, maybe they were somewhere around in the house and they just didn't see them, and then they found them, you know, in a different room or something. I don't know. But wouldn't you go make sure and ask and tell your wife, like, oh, I didn't find them here, did you find them? Like, communication, and then be like, okay, we need to call the cops. It's just very strange that he just goes out for 6 minutes, comes back, and then he's like, okay, hi, just stands outside. Doesn't continue to look, just stands by his tree. And according to the footage, Jaclyn never left the house to search for the boys. You always go and recheck places that someone else has already checked because maybe they just looked past it or something. Maybe they were hiding in a closet and they didn't check that closet and then you opened it and they're in that closet. That's just an example. Maybe you're just like, okay, they have to be here. Maybe I just didn't see them. But no. She doesn't come outside and look, and he doesn't go back inside and ask her if she found them. So it's all very weird. Either way, the number one thing that we don't see on this footage is the boys. The boys aren't in this footage at all. You don't see them whatsoever. Either way, the police arrive around 4:52, and then Trezell goes off in his van to help them search. We're gonna jump into the investigation part, some points that I've seen about the investigation. Right off the bat, the 4 other children have been removed from the home. Not sure where they are, but they have been removed. 2 days after the boys went missing, the police started digging up the backyard of the Cal City home. Huge Chad and Lori Daybell vibes here. It's very creepy. Another strange thing that happened, I'm not sure who hired them, but there was a PI, and this private investigator's name is Bill Garcia. He led a search towards an Albertsons, which is a grocery store in California, in an area or a town called Tehachapi.
Developing news now we've been following for 3 weeks. A private investigator says the case for 2 missing California boys has now led them to Tehachapi.
Eyewitness News reporter David Kaplan spoke with the investigator about a new possible lead in that case.
He met a woman in California City who said her mother was at the Albertsons parking lot in Tehachapi on December 23rd and says she saw the boys.
She said that when she saw the news report about the missing boys, that she was sure that that was the boys with these 2 adults, which were both male.
As far as all of this goes, there was a news report done on it, and everyone kind of seems to think that this is like hearsay and that it was a false tip. That's pretty much what is considered now by everyone, but I thought I'd just bring it up. Kind of a strange thing. It's kind of weird if it is true that 2 men would take 2 missing children to a grocery store. They're all over the news. It's a huge case. I don't know why, if you have stolen 2 children, that you would just go out in public with them. It's not really something that you think a kidnapper would do. People also kind of think maybe this was a false lead that allegedly maybe the parents somehow threw out there to kind of mislead the investigation. We don't know. On January 13th, the police searched a field across from the West's old apartment back in Bakersfield. That was also on the news, and nothing was found. Regarding that field, a YouTuber by the name of Noor Jasmine actually went over to Bakersfield as well as Cal City and did a vlog kind of exploring the area as she went to the field across from the West's old apartment in Bakersfield and looked around. There's also some like oil kind of tanks that people were concerned about. I'll again have that link down below as well. This was the one that I found very, very strange. This is something that 10 to Life brought up. A 911 phone call has been circulating YouTube. A woman claims that a fire took place on the property owned by Trezell West's parents. I'm pretty sure that's 4 months ago when the statement was made, not 4 months ago when you're watching this video, so just be aware of that. So that would kind of be around the timeline when the boys were last reported to be seen. There's actually really no sightings of the boys, which is very crazy, and we'll get to that in a moment. There's something in this 911 phone call about a burnt couch. Firefighters came. I'm not 100% sure, but if I can find the actual YouTube video of this 911 phone call, I'll have it linked down below. This case kind of is a little reminiscent to the last video I did on the Nicole Morin disappearance. If the children haven't been reported to be seen for months, the police could be months behind on their disappearance, and we just don't know. So really, if they had disappeared months ago, the boys could literally be anywhere. But the police chief did eventually announce that he suspects there was foul play in this case, which is, thankfully he did, because there's so many sketchy signs here. I'm so glad that they're on top of their game. And that's all I could really find on like really key points on the investigation. So now let's get into some theories and questions that I thought were very interesting, and I thought that you guys would be interested in, and I thought I should bring up. So this was something that has bothered me going throughout this case. Why were 4 of the children at the grandmother's house, but Orrin and Orson weren't? Now there could be explanations to this. Maybe the grandmother couldn't handle taking care of 6 children all at once. I think it was stated by Trezell and Jaclyn somewhere that they were like way younger than the other children, so it just made more sense to keep them at home and have the older kids go hang out at grandma's. But I don't know, I just find it very strange that the 2 children that went missing were the 2 children that didn't go to grandma's house. Another very strange fact I came across is that allegedly the previous owners of this Cal City home that the Wests moved into said that her husband installed a latch on that gate that Trezell said he left open. But the latch he installed on this gate was one of those ones that it swings shut, so it can't be left open. If it is true, that just debunks Trezell's entire statement about leaving the gate open and the boys running out. Now, it could just be a false tip, may not be true, but if it is true, that's a huge part of the story that I'm sure might be mentioned when everything is finally figured out. Another thing that I'm extremely interested in, and 10 to Life actually brought this up, is I want to know if the police actually found evidence of chalk drawings in the backyard, because Trezell and Jaclyn claim that the boys were out in the backyard playing with chalk. Is there actually evidence that they were out there playing with chalk? Were the chalk drawings like drawings that a child would make? How hard was the chalk pressed in? Does it look like the chalk was done by an adult to cover it up and make it look like children did it? Like, there's so many questions I have about this chalk. I think another huge piece of knowledge in this case is that the neighbors in Cal City have reported to have never seen Orrin and Orson at that home, and they moved in there in September. So in 3 to 4 months, the neighbors never seen these children. That's a huge red flag. And now I know they can make the excuse that it was a pandemic. Apparently the Wests were like very protective of the children and didn't want them to go out anywhere, really. I feel like that is very contradictory, because you have 6 children, you're gonna let them play out in your backyard. Why aren't the neighbors hearing the children play outside? Especially if they're as rambunctious as Trezell says they are. You would hear a 3 and 4-year-old outside screaming and having fun and running around, and these neighbors never seen them. Very strange. And on top of that, if we go back to the video footage that the neighbors released, and we go back from the Saturday before the boys went missing, there's footage of the Wests and 4 children getting into their van and driving off. There's only 6 people caught on this footage, not 8. And allegedly they said that the reason they were getting into this van that day was to go Christmas shopping. So if you're so scared during this pandemic that your children can't even go outside and play in the backyard, why would you be taking them to a mall or wherever you're going to go shopping with them? Just saying, like, the stories just don't line up for me. Could this be the time that they were taking the children to the grandmother's house? If so, again, where are the 3 and 4-year-olds? Are you leaving the 3 and 4-year-old at home by themselves? Hopefully not, because a 3 and 4-year-old can't take care of themselves at home by themselves. So it's just, none of it makes sense. And that all leads to the biggest theory that I think everyone really is thinking right now, and is that, excuse me, chills, Orrin and Orson never made it to Cal City, and that something happened to them back when they were living in Bakersfield. I think everyone pretty much thinks that these 2 boys never made it to California City. No one's seen them there. There's no reported sightings of them there. I just don't feel like that's possible. This is a theory that I can really get behind. I really do think that they most likely never made it there, and that this, if we're comparing this to more cases, that this could really be like a Casey Anthony type situation, and that these boys were missing months ahead and they were only reported missing months later. Another thing that leads people to think this is that there was a woman that lent Trezell $5,000 while he was closing his home so that he could pay for like moving costs and closing costs and whatnot on the home that they bought in Cal City. And this woman admitted to 10 to Life that when she was talking to Trezell, he told her that he only had 4 children, not 6. He had 4 children. I think it took a few months for them to close on this house, and during that time they got really close, and that is why he told her this information. And that apparently he would like stay late and hang out with her and have conversations about conspiracies and Pizzagate and all of this stuff. I don't know, it's weird. Everyone's questioning this relationship they had together. There's not really much to go on, but from what we do get from this woman is that he told her that he had 4 children, and she didn't think anything of that until all of this news came out about the 2 other children being missing, and it just gave her chills thinking that, oh, he said he had 4 children. Why is he telling this woman When he's moving to Cal City, he has 4 children. Does that mean that something happened to the other 2 children before? There's also some weird things about the West boarding up their house soon after the boys went missing. And apparently this woman is the one that told Trezell to board up the house because he was saying people were vandalizing it. And so she told him about a handyman that she knew. And so Trezell got this handyman to board up their home, which I guess if people are coming onto your property and vandalizing it, that makes sense. Another odd question that is asked is if it was so cold outside, which I get, California, I've been in California in the winter time, it does get cold in the desert. If it's so cold outside that you have to get firewood to light the fireplace inside because that house is so cold inside, then why are a 3- and 4-year-old outside playing with chalk if it's that cold? Wouldn't they be doing an activity inside where it's warmer? Because a 3- and 4-year-old's immune system is not the best. So why would they be outside playing with chalk? So, I don't know. Another odd thing that people brought up is why is Jaclyn inside wrapping Christmas presents and having to kick the boys outside while she wraps them? Why doesn't she just wrap them when they go to bed? That's normally what people do. I feel like the most logical thing is you wrap the Christmas presents when the kids go to bed so they don't see them. But again, they're like a 3- and 4-year-old, so would they even really notice like what's going on? I don't know. But it's just another odd thing that why she was wrapping Christmas presents in the middle of the day and had to kick the kids outside to go play with chalk. Weird thing after weird thing. So the home that they bought in Cal City is a 3-bedroom home. How practical is it to fit 6 children plus 2 adults in a 3-bedroom home? Seems very squishy if you ask me, but again, their financial situation was very limited, it seemed like. On top of that, doesn't CPS make like routine rounds and like checkups on newly adopted children and or foster children? I don't know how often they do it, but like shouldn't they be checking every like month or so, or if these children are in the home that they're supposed to be, if they're being taken care of? I just don't understand how no one ever came and checked on Orrin and Orson. I feel like that's something that's supposed to be done. Regarding the firewood situation, a question that is asked is, could they be using this fireplace situation saying that they had to light it and get firewood because it was cold out to cover up for the fact that they were burning evidence in the fireplace? That's something that I'm interested in knowing, if they found any evidence in the fireplace of anything getting burned. Another thing that's very strange is the neighbors didn't see the kids, but how about the family members? My main concern is why haven't the family members of the Wests ever said if they had seen the children or not? My big question would be, were the kids around for Thanksgiving? Were they around for Halloween? Like, normally you go over to people's houses for Thanksgiving, and were the grandparents and the other family members not questioning where Orrin and Orson were, why the other 4 children were there? Or were they there at Thanksgiving, which mean that they were last seen only about a month before they disappeared? It would help narrow down the timeline. Also, that begs the question of why are there no photos of Orton and Orson wearing Halloween costumes? Normally, again, there could be people out there that don't, but normally people take pictures of their children in their Halloween costumes. It's fun. They like to share them with their family and friends, and you know, or their family and friends ask them to take pictures so that they can see the kids in the costumes, because little kids in costumes are just cute. Why are there no photos of them in Halloween costumes? I just find that very odd too. As of filming this video, it's been about 2 months since the boys were reported missing, and let me press this again that this is when they were reported missing. It is not when they could have went missing, and there are so many conflicting stories about when the boys were last seen. So we actually really don't know when the boys were last seen and when they potentially could have went missing. In my opinion, I'm pretty sure that they did not go missing on December 21st, 2020, like the West claim. As of right now, there is a reward for any information that brings the boys home. How do you guys feel about this entire case and this investigation and situation? To me, as I said a million times throughout this video, it's very sketchy, very strange. I don't understand. It makes no sense. There's so many conflicting stories. Let me know down below your opinions on this and your potential ideas of what may have happened. I don't know. It's wild to me. There's so many bad vibes that reflect other cases that are super sketchy. If you're watching this video and have any information, I'll leave a link down below so you can report that. It's very important. Even if you think that it may not matter, it could actually matter. And someone's tip, no matter how small or unimportant they may think it may be, might lead to finding these boys. I'm just hoping that news breaks soon and I can do an update on this video, letting you guys know the boys were found and that they're okay. But as it seems, anything could have really happened to these boys, and I don't know. With that, please discuss it down below. I will be responding to everyone's comments and discussing along with you guys. And of course, always let me know if you have any cases that you want me to bring up or cover. And with that, I'm going to just show Orrin and Orson's photos again. If anyone sees these little boys out there, please, please, please report it. And let's bring Orrin and Orson home.
Oh,